The star quarterback, the star point guard, having an awesome relationship, having a great business, those things all require the same thing that you need in order to have optimal health. And that is the small things. Focusing on the small things. And in this video, I'm going to share what those three things are and what you can do for each of those. Welcome to Executive Health. I'm Julian Hayes II. If this is your first time here, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. This is the home for entrepreneurs, executives, and investors who want to look, feel, and stay at the top of their game with precision so they can enjoy the finer things in life. And we do that through leveraging precision performance longevity. And as I was talking about, there are a couple of things that can make or break your fitness goal. But before we get into that, I'm going to paint the scene here of why that is the case. And so think about this. You have the star quarterback who's missing his throws. You have the star point guard who cannot buy a bucket. He's throwing bricks up there. And in sports, when you hear this star player struggle, you'll have talk radio, and then you'll have the casual fan. These people typically they'll point to some macro issue. But if you talk to a former athlete, if you actually listen to the coach during the interview post-game, you'll hear something much smaller. You'll hear something that's much more surprising. And that's because the coach and the former athlete, they understand that the micro determines the macro. Now, perhaps this quarterback, he's missing his throws because his communication is slightly off with his linemen and receivers. Maybe this star point guard is missing his shots because his mechanics are off. Maybe he's struggling to read the space that's given to him. I can understand that playing basketball. And this same scenario plays out in both actually business and fitness. You see, when someone's looking to take charge of their health, they'll focus on the micro and they'll typically neglect the micro. And this approach is backwards. Now, succeeding in fitness, succeeding in business, succeeding with your relationships, this starts with the micro. I have to, personally, myself, I could have to continually to remind myself to focus on the macro. Don't get so lost in the macro. Focus on the micro. And so these three things, I want to share three simple truths that I keep in mind, that I remind myself, and that perhaps could be of use to you as well. And the very first principle is that your results are invisible at the beginning. And when you think about this pursuit of success, and it often comes with the duality at the very beginning of the process. And here's what I mean by this. On one hand, you have excitement, you have anticipation. You can just feel it. You're closing your eyes. You can just see these goals, and you can just see these milestones that you're going to accomplish. And on the other end, and I can definitely attest to this, something's lurking, and it's not just uncertainty, but it's the actual absence of these visible results. I can feel and anticipate and be excited about reducing my biological age, lowering my A1C, and losing 15 pounds. But I open my eyes, in this current reality, there's an absence of these visible results right now. I don't have none of this. And I'll start with business, and because I'm sure a lot of you can relate to this, or even just in your careers, that you start emailing and you start recording. No one's replying. You start calling people. No one's answering or even returning your calls, probably. You're creating content. No one's reading it. That's how I started when I first writing before any of the publications. I was creating content for an audience of no one because no one was reading it. And there was no results. I think about video content, and there could be no one reading it or listening or watching it. Or I think about audio content with the podcast. There's no one listening to it. You're promoting a product and service. No one's buying it. And when I think about fitness, you're eating healthy, you're exercising, but the interest don't seem to be coming off. Now, for me, it was the opposite end of the spectrum. I'm eating and eating and eating and exercising and training, but I don't seem to be getting any more muscular and bigger. At one point, that's how I felt. Now, this initial excitement, it wears off. So when I mentioned this duality, this excitement is gone now. And now there's no results to show for anything. And this is a very tempting moment. This is where a lot of times people abandon the ship. They jump over deck and say, forget it. And abandoning ship is another code word for saying abandoning their goals, changing their plan, tweaking, or making some modifications, whatever word you want to finesse to change it. Now, there's a great book, and this is where I got the inspiration from this. This is from Jeff Olson, and he states in his book, The Slight Edge, which is a must read, that indeed results are invisible at the beginning. Just because you do not have an absence, or just because I should say that you have an absence of visible results, it doesn't mean that there's nothing happening. It doesn't mean that there's a lack of invisible activity. And this is the kryptonite for many entrepreneurs, for many people with their health, for many of us in this generation, because this generation is a microwave generation. We need things instantly. Instant gratification is our thing now. But this is the kryptonite, and the kryptonite is impatience, the need for immediacy. It takes time for even an ice cube to melt. And so it's going to take time for us to build the body that we want, to build the health that we want, to build the business that we want, to forge the relationships that we want, to learn the languages, to travel, to live the lifestyle that we want. It's going to take time for that. So the ice cube that's sitting at the kitchen table, we sit this ice cube at the table, and it looks like nothing is happening. And this is the absence of visible results, because nothing's happening. I'm just sitting here watching this ice cube right now. But in actuality, this ice cube is actually melting. It's doing it slowly, but this is the invisible activity. And change can be frustrating. It can be damn frustrating. It can seem like nothing is happening despite you taking all of the quote unquote right actions. But all of these tiny actions, all of these tiny victories, they are accumulating daily. And these are quietly stacking up in the background to become something of significance down the line. And before you know it, you have the results that you wanted, even though in the moment that you were in, it seemed like nothing was coming to fruition for you. So keep calling, keep pitching, keep writing, keep recording, and most importantly, keep exercising, keep eating healthy. Because even though you may not see anything right now, this doesn't mean that nothing is happening. Key thing to keep in mind. So the second principle and point that I wanted to make here is to avoid the complacency virus. It's a deadly virus out here that no one's talking about. This is a pandemic in itself of complacency. So the virus of complacency, it stops many entrepreneurs, it stops many people from truly getting what they want. And when you suffer from this virus, you're essentially given an anesthetic before hitting the operating room. I don't know any other way to put it. And over time, you become immune. You become dull to what you're becoming. And a telltale sign, a big, bright sign that you're suffering from this virus, is that you're creating explanations. You are minimizing things that you once didn't tolerate. So it goes without saying that complacency is a silent killer to not only your fitness goals, to not only your health goals, but also to your business. Thinking that, hey, it's the holiday time, especially. This is very important with the holidays coming up. It's only a few pounds. It's only one client. It's only one work day. It's only one video. It's only one episode. It's only one day that I didn't attend to the relationship. It's only one this, one that, one that. And so complacency, it destroys progress. It destroys growth. And it really makes it difficult, and it really makes it unlikely that any meaningful changes are going to happen. This is when you get on the proverbial thing of where I'm just stuck. I'm stuck in neutral. So when you're complacent, you are unlikely to adapt to this ever-changing environment. And if there's anything that we can say now about the world, is that it is ever changing. The world is rapidly changing. It is changing at a breakneck pace. So when you're not adapting, when you're not growing, you're moving in an opposite direction, which is quite deadly. And that is you're essentially making yourself obsolete. So weight gain, gaining weight, decreasing in your business performance, decreasing and separating yourself in your relationships. I think about these things, and they don't arrive overnight. And that's what makes it so difficult. You often hear, I guess, couples and things like that talk about, man, we just grew apart. I don't know how it happened. Well, it didn't happen overnight. It happened through small things over time. Man, I don't know how I became 15 to 20 pounds overweight. And there's a lot of people who were in that situation during the pandemic. They got those quarantine pounds, or those pandemic pounds, all these nicknames for it. So it happened so slow, so discreet yet deadly, that you didn't even realize that it's happening. So one thing is to always don't mistakenly think that your current status quo is going to continue as is. There's a great book, and there's a great just saying that I live by is only the paranoid survive. So what got you here won't get you to the next level. Comfortability equates to losing your edge, to getting replaced, packing on the pounds, losing that important relationship. But on the other hand, as we think about, okay, how do I avoid this complacency virus? Now, and if you're complacent right now, the flipping the switch doesn't necessarily need to be complicated. In fact, you can just start with the honest self-assessment of yourself. And as you are self-assessing yourself, it's important to be brutally honest with yourself and truly ask yourself, with no judgment, most importantly, have I lowered my standards? Have I lowered my values? Have I lowered my goals? Have I lowered them because of my obstacles, my environment, my wavering levels of inspiration? Or is there some other crisis, some other reasoning? And gaining awareness, giving yourself this heavy reality check is necessary to create the urgency to change. It's necessary to help yourself recommit to your health and longevity goals. So my last point here is to operate with an investor's mentality, whether it's stocks, whether it's Bitcoin. Both of these things, they require commitment for the long haul. I'm not just talking about today. I'm not just talking about next week. I'm not even talking about next month. I'm not even talking about the end of 2023. I'm thinking 5, 10, 20 years and beyond. I'm thinking, hey, I'm a chess grandmaster, and I'm going to think 15 moves ahead. Now, unfortunately, this is the opposite of how many people go about changing their health, changing their body, changing. Many of these fitness and weight loss programs and health programs, they promise to change your life, change your body. They promise to do it in 90 days. Some even promise to do it in, 6 weeks or 4 weeks. And oftentimes with these things, will you get some results? Absolutely. You absolutely will. But there's another question that's even more importantly, will it completely overhaul your life? It's unlikely, because you haven't had enough time to fundamentally reshift your habits. You haven't had enough time to fundamentally shift your identity. Anyone can follow a program for 4 weeks. Anyone can probably follow it for 6 weeks, for 90 days. But the most important question, and one of the questions that we live by in this practice, and that I live by in this practice every time with a client, is one of the last steps when we talk about optimal health. And that is, what's next? You have to know what's next. It's such a simple question, but it's easy to overlook what's next. Because when you don't have something that's next on the horizon, what happens then is that there's nothing, and there's an empty void there. And when you have the empty void, this is primed for old habits to return. And this is a concept that was discussed in The Power of Habit, which is a great book on habit building. And you You build better habits by not just getting rid of those habits and leaving nothing there. You replace habits. You replace a negative habit that you deem negative with something that's positive there. So you got to have something there, or you're going to revert back to your old ways. So this is why you see some people, they lose weight with these fitness challenges. They improve their health biomarkers, their lab work, only to gain all this weight back months later, only to revert back to the old biomarkers down the road. You think about this in business. You have these people who have a great quarter, they have a great year, but they don't duplicate it in the following quarters. They don't duplicate it in the following year. And there was no foundation there. There was no substance there. And this is a lesson that I actually had to learn. And I learned the hard way. And so everything comes with a cost. And I want you to think about this. When you're opting and priming yourself for short-term pleasures with only the short end in sight, what you're doing is you are often unknowingly, you're signing up for long-term frustration. Short-term pleasures lead to long-term agony. So as you go about your fitness goals, one thing I want you to do is to pause and then assess if the way that you're going about it is something that's sustainable well beyond 90 days. I challenge you, instead of thinking about a 90-day program, think in terms of a 365-day program. And if that's too much, then give yourself 300 days. And you got 65 days for when life happens, because we are human after all. So none of us are perfect. So just as the tiny crack in the dam, this serves as the impetus for the dam to burst and for the dam to eventually lead to flooding the area. One small crack in your infrastructure, in your daily infrastructure, this could serve as the impetus to you not getting what you truly want. This could serve as the impetus to you lowering your goals and lessening yourself, not fulfilling your potential. So what I want you to do is to focus on the micro and to truly leave no stone unturned. And before you know it, the dream business, the dream body will morph into your new everyday reality.